Imagine for a second that it's the year 2036. You wake up, it's a Tuesday morning, and you have absolutely nowhere you need to be. Your bank account is literally growing while you sleep, and that feeling of dread about a boss, a commute, or some looming bill, it's just gone. Now, most people are told this dream takes 40 years of grinding away, but what if that's all just a trap? Okay, let's really get into this.
So here's our game plan. We're going to first break down why the old retirement rules are totally broken. Then, we'll talk about the slow but super reliable engine for building wealth. After that, we'll shift gears into the fast lane. And then, the best part, how to merge them into a powerful 10-year strategy. And finally, we'll tackle the one thing that stops almost everyone in their tracks: fear.
All right, first up, the 40-year retirement trap. Let's dig into why the advice our parents followed, the stuff that was supposed to work, just doesn't apply anymore.
So let's just start with a huge question. What if you could take that entire 4-decade slog and compress it into just 1 decade? I know, it sounds a little bit crazy, but the math behind it is actually surprisingly simple once you understand the two big forces at play. You see, the first force that's constantly working against you is inflation. It's like this silent killer of your wealth. If you take $1,000 today and you just hide it under your mattress, you are actually losing money. Why? Well, because that $1,000 might buy you a shiny new MacBook today, but just a few years from now, that same laptop is going to cost $1,200. Your cash just sat there while the rest of the world got more expensive.
So the obvious answer is, okay, I'll invest my money, right? Make it grow faster than inflation. But here's where almost everyone gets stuck. They see these scary headlines about Monday massacres, and they remember the huge market crashes in 2008 or even 2020. And to them, investing just feels like a fancy casino where you could lose every single thing you've worked so hard for.
And that fear right there brings us to the first part of our strategy, the slow lane. This is all about building wealth in a way that's safe, automatic, and doesn't feel like you're gambling your future away.
The biggest mistake most beginners make is thinking that to be an investor, you have to be some kind of genius who can pick the next Tesla or the next Apple. But the reality is, even the pros, the people whose full-time job is to pick stocks, they almost never beat the overall market in the long run. So why on earth would we try?
Well, instead of trying to pick one song and praying it becomes a hit, what if you could just buy the entire top 40 music chart? That's basically what an index fund is, the S&P 500. That's the business world's top 40. It's just a basket of the 500 biggest companies in the US. And if one company starts to tank, it just gets dropped from the list and replaced by a new rising star. You're not betting on a single horse, you're betting on the entire US economy.
And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Warren Buffett, literally one of the most successful investors of all time, has been saying for years that for most people, the best thing you can possibly do is just buy an S&P 500 index fund and then just leave it alone.
And this shows you exactly how it works. It's brilliant. If you put $1,000 into an S&P 500 fund, you don't just own one company. You instantly own about $64 of Apple, $54 of Microsoft, and little tiny pieces of 498 other huge companies. You are automatically diversified. Every single day, thousands of people at these companies go to work creating value, and you get to own a small piece of all that effort.
Now, over the long haul, this slow lane strategy has delivered an average return of around 7 to 10% a year. And look, that is a fantastic, super reliable way to become a millionaire by the time you're 65. But it's a terrible way to become free in your 30s. So this can't be our only engine. It's just not fast enough.
So let's move on to the second engine. This is where things get really exciting. It's time for the fast lane. This is where we stop just investing in other people's businesses and we start investing in our own.
Think about it. The stock market gives you a pretty steady 7% return. But what if you could do better? What if you could take a little bit of money and generate a return of, say, 100% or 200% or even more in a single year? Well, the answer is almost always a resounding yes.
Let's look at a super simple real-world example. Say there's a healthcare worker making $15 an hour. They spend just $100 on a course to get certified as a phlebotomist. Suddenly, their new job pays $25 an hour. That tiny $100 investment paid for itself in just 10 hours of work and it permanently boosted their earning power forever. That is an insane return.
This right here is the whole idea of investing in what we'll call the S&P Me. Before you pour all your money into the S&P 500, you invest in yourself. Whether that's learning a new skill, getting a certification, or starting a side business, the returns you can get on your own ability to make money will almost always crush the stock market in the short term.
Okay,
So we've got the slow lane and the fast lane. How do we put them together? Well, that brings us to the core of this whole thing, the 10-year hybrid strategy.
So think of it like this. You've got two engines working for you. With engine 1, the slow lane, you just set up automatic recurring investments into your index fund. It could be $5 a day. Seriously, the cost of a coffee. Then you focus all your extra time and energy and money on engine 2, the fast lane. Now here's the magic. You take all that extra income from the fast lane and you use it to pour more fuel into your automated slow lane investments. This creates this incredible feedback loop, a flywheel of wealth that just completely destroys that old 40-year timeline.
And that slow lane engine, well, it's powered by what Einstein supposedly called the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest. It's that magical process where your money starts making its own money. And by constantly adding fuel from your fast lane, you just turbocharge the whole thing, creating this massive snowball of wealth.
Now, all of this sounds really great in theory, but there is one final boss you have to defeat on this journey, and it's not the market, it's not the economy, it's your own psychology. Just look at history. Since 1985, we've lived through the Black Monday crash, the dot-com bubble bursting, the 2008 global financial crisis, and the COVID crash in 2020. And after every single one of these supposedly world-ending events, what happened? The market not only recovered, but it went on to smash all-time highs. And this is maybe the most important thing to remember. Losses on a screen aren't real until you hit the sell button. The people who invested right before the 2008 crash and simply did nothing, they just held on, they didn't lose money. They watched their investments double or even triple in the years that followed. Your real superpower here is just patience.
And please don't let that voice in your head that says, I don't have enough money, stop you. You can literally start this today on your phone with $5. The amount you start with is so much less important than the simple act of just getting started.
So, that brings us to the end. That 10-year timeline to financial freedom, it's not some fantasy, it's a real blueprint. So the only question left for you is, what's your first move? Are you going to fund your slow lane engine with an investment in the S&P 500, or are you going to rev up your fast lane by investing in the S&P Me? Your timeline starts now.